Osteitis pubis. What the hell is that? Inflammation in the joint between your left and right pubic bones. It causes pain and swelling in your groin and lower abdomen, usually caused by repetitive use with your hips, pelvis, and groin. It is common in athletes. Some people need surgery to repair the pubic symphysis joint if it's severely damaged or hasn't gotten better after other treatments. And that's exactly what Sharks captain Logan Couture is dealing with. Sounds scary, right? When I first hurt my hips 4 years ago, I was supposed to have femoral acetabular impingement, or whatever the heck you call it, which basically means hip impingement. And the odd thing with that is that people will get surgeries for that condition, but yet after the surgery will still have the same symptoms. So clearly something doesn't work there. And by most accounts, this condition, when treated, seems to have the same problem, where the surgery doesn't fix it. So instead of constantly diagnosing conditions, I'm going to focus on solutions. Here is how I fix my hips and how I would fix Logan Couture's hips. Start light, start slow, from the ground up with backward sled dragging and constant ankle and calf work, thereby strengthening down here and taking pressure off of the rest of the chain up here. Then, as the inflammation subsides, we work on short range work, going nice and slow so that we don't irritate anything and that we get blood flow and life back into the hips, but also making sure we train both sides of the hip, getting the lower back involved, and staying at a level that you can handle, eventually progressing the full range. As the tolerance builds there, we recalibrate positions like the HEG split squat, working 5 seconds down, 5 second pause, 5 seconds up, and doing the exact same thing with something like the seated good morning. Then once your symptoms and pains go away, you continue to get even stronger in those positions so you won't have to deal with those pains ever again, just like what happened with me. And I believe that is exactly how we treat hip conditions, just like osteitis pubis or fibis, whatever. Okay, here's the problem that I have with diagnosis like that. Human beings are not cars. I think we have that fundamentally wrong, because what I've seen is that the human body has a unique ability to adapt to stimulus. And so it very well could be that different parts of your body and your hips are indeed broken, just like certain parts of a car would have things that would break down over time, or certain parts of a house would break down over time. But the difference between a car and a human body, or a house and a human body, is that the stimulus, you don't change a car by pumping blood into an area just like you do with a human. And likewise, with a human, you don't turn a screw a certain way or necessarily attach things a certain way. You could with surgery, but that doesn't always work with people. But to think of these two as the same thing, that's one of the problems with Western medicine, in my opinion. Because we spend way too much time diagnosing issues and not focusing enough on ability, which is actually where people make breakthroughs. Overcoming past injuries, overcoming weaknesses, overcoming conditions. When you train ability, that's where the results pop up. That's the same thing that happened with me. I was supposed to be stuck with FAI, femoral acetabular hip impingement, and then on top of that, you have thousands, if not, I'm just going to say it, there's millions of things that you can diagnose human beings with, conditions and things like that, emotional or physical or otherwise. And then we choose to identify with those specific conditions and say that we can't overcome those things because we have to identify with the condition. And that's kind of a separate problem in of itself, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous. My identity is ability, because I think any skill can be learned. I think anybody can create a change and a transformation. I have seen that firsthand. Someone like a Ben Patrick is no different from the rest of us, because he was like us. He was just like us, as human beings, as hockey players, as whatever, as other athletes, as you name it. That's the same guy that was just like us. Anyway, enough of that rant. How do we help out hockey players overcome serious hip injuries like what you have with Sharks captain Logan Couture, with this the osteitis pubic bone pain or whatever swollen is going on here, just extra inflammation. Like, I don't know what the... Okay, so regardless, he has inflammation inside of his hips, inside of his pubic bone, inside of his groin. Like, there's pains there. He's having trouble sleeping at night. He's having trouble moving. That is no good. Whatever he tries out, something will just inflame once again. The thing with that is, he did not magically, I would assume, did not magically just turn into that overnight. This was a gradual progress over either his whole career or just in the off season, or I don't know. There's a multitude of factors that go into it, but regardless, he is not able to play this year, and he has had many of these setbacks, which is common with something like osteitis pubis, whatever. If he was with me, this is what I would do with him. And actually, before I get into that, I'm just going to discuss that the other conditions, in addition to what I've helped out with and what I've witnessed with someone like a Ben Patrick and gotten to know him personally, seen his story, but even it's everywhere at this point too, seen his transformation. I have also created transformations, not just general pop people in their 70s and 80s trying to live a better life and get into the realm of fitness and ability there, but I've also fixed professional athletes. Like I have a KHLer who was having back issues and wasn't able to sleep at night, much like you have with this hip pain here. I also have someone who's 18 who also had back issues, had a little tweak, and needed help to get around that. I've been able to fix both of them. I actually think backs are more serious than hips, although they're kind of interrelated at the same time, just because back is more mental, whereas hips can turn into mental. Any type of injury can turn into mental, but backs are more the ones that you have to be careful with. I don't think hips are complicated. I think they just take a lot of time to progress. And so to move past comparing conditions, let's get into what I would do with Logan if he was with me. And this goes, by the way, for the rest of you who are dealing with hip issues as a hockey player, or just anybody in general who's dealing with serious hip issues or serious hip injuries. This is what I would do with you the entire process. No matter how long it takes, everyone's on a different journey as far as healing and strengthening. So whatever time it takes is the time it takes. I can never give an exact guideline, and anybody who gives you an exact guideline is full of shit. They're full of shit if they give you a guideline. Again, another beef that I have with the doctors. Anyway, the first step here is to let the inflammation subside. Now, in order to do that, you need to rest and recover. I wouldn't do the rest, ice, compression, elevation method. The same guy who created that study has since then debunked his own work, and therefore that breeds precedence to me to listen to him a little bit more on what he's newly discovered. And so that is not the preferred method. You could do heat. You could do like something like a sauna. Granted, combining that with inflammation is not where it's already being heated up anyway, is maybe not the best route. Regardless, you are going to need rest. I think if you're not able to move, like if you're in Logan's position, you have to do things with your diet or supplements, because if you can't move, that's going to be the only thing you have power and access to is what you eat. And that will affect the way that you recover, the different supplements that you take, the different foods that you consume as well. Different foods will affect you differently. Many of you know my personal diet and what I have stuck with, which is an animal-based meat, fruit, honey, raw dairy. That is what I personally feel best with. I have tried out a few other things, especially recently. I've tried implementing bread and rice just to add a little bit of variety, but I have not been consuming vegetables for over 2 years at this point, and I feel better without them. That may not be true for the rest of you, but that is what I personally do. I find that when I go on a diet like that and I focus priority on things like meat, that any type of inflammation that I have either subsides or that I don't really notice anything. But that's just me personally. Regardless, again, if you cannot move, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, that's the best way to go. When you are ready to move, because again, common theme here, the body does adapt to stimulus, I would say you want to work from the ground up. So that's where the ankle and calf work comes in. That's where something like a backward sled drag comes in, because this is what is easily accessible to you. You're going to get movement with the hips when you do something like that backward sled drag, especially the lower that you get or the more that you bend at the waist here and then step backwards. And even if you take bigger steps, that will engage the hips a little bit more. But it's also going to go up and down the chain. But what I like about backwards walking is that it doesn't put any serious stress on the hips for Logan's specific case. You're also working from the ground up, thereby taking pressure off of everything else up here. You get this stronger, especially as hockey players. These will atrophy when they're inside of those really stiff boots because the calves do not get stimulated in hockey. It's only this quad muscle and then everything upwards maybe a little bit. But even in someone's like Logan case, the reason that so many hockey players have hip issues is because the hips also don't get stimulated or get stronger. The quads and maybe some muscles around the knee are the only muscles in hockey that by doing that type of tension training, they will get stronger. It's similar to the effect that happens in ski where the quads will hypertrophy more and then the calves atrophy, so they get weaker and they get smaller. You have to train those. You have to keep those things balanced with each other. That way your whole kinetic chain is in structural balance, which I believe is the best way to not hurt yourself. So maybe Logan needs to get stronger with his ankles. A bunch of tib raises, calf work as well, maybe to get that soleus muscle stronger, to get up and down the chain, and even that gastro as well. So backwards walking, calf work, ankle work, that's the way to go as a start, thereby taking stimulus off of it. You're going to do that as the inflammation subsides. But then once it's subsided, that is where you get into additional work that focuses directly on the hips. So you first want to do exercises that don't stretch out the muscles because that is where the most anabolic effect or hypertrophy effect happens. We don't want that because that's going to cause inflammation. You're going to need time to recover. What you need is a pump to the area. That's the magic of what's called short range, what the latter half of what makes something like the HEG, Athletic Truth Group system, work, this short range. And then we're going to get into long range later, but the short range movement for the hip, one of my favorites, one of the things that fixed my hips, this short range hip flexor reverse squat is what Ben Patrick refers to it. This is great for a pump. Now, with something like hip inflammation, with osteitis pubis, whatever you call it, I would go slower. Probably like this, probably 5 seconds up, probably 5 seconds down. That way, you can still stimulate the area, but not seriously stretch it out. And that falls very well in line with keeping the inflammation down. As far as I can tell, based off what I'm understanding off of this condition, if you like just go all out, pump it like this, that's gonna tweak something or cause the inflammation to get even worse. Logan could do that if he wanted to, but that all depends on his own ability. I've never seen him move based off of this specific injury, so I'm just giving guesses. You're either gonna go slow, pulling up and pulling and letting it go down here, and then eventually progress to something that's faster and then even something that works both legs at the same time. Now you also want to train the opposite of that by training the back extension. Now, you don't have to be stuck at just this 45-degree angle, but I would do a similar principle where we're just holding it isometrically, holding it still, then progressing very slowly with motion with either assistance. That way it keeps the inflammation down. You can either keep the spine extended like this, thereby putting more pressure on the glutes, or you can round the back. Both options are okay, but you would go slow up and down to alleviate the inflammation off of your hips. You also want to train all the angles. So you have things like reverse hypers, you have things like 90-degree back extensions. Those are all good. And they also focus on that pump, that short range movement. Now a little nuance, you could, just to get more variety, you could add specific knee exercises, which will help up and down the chain, depending on if you have that weak link. If your hamstrings are sore, maybe do some hamstring curls in addition to this. That shouldn't cause inflammation, but it will still develop the hamstring, everything behind here. That way it will still get blood flow up and down the posterior chain and get blood flow into that hip capsule. Let's move on to the next step. Once you're able to tolerate the short range and the inflammation subsides, you want to recalibrate very slowly longer positions, just like the H&G split squat here. What do I mean by recalibrate? You want to go up and down for 5 seconds with a little pause for 5 seconds also. Basically, it's going to look like this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The reason that this works so well for coming back from injuries or other conditions or symptoms is that it makes you slow down. It forces the body and all the muscles to fire in a stretch just like this. So you can do that in something like a split squat or a seated good morning, which you can do both of those. This is short for me. You can do both of these exercises very gently, nice and slow. You don't have to hold the bottom for 5 seconds. And by recalibrating, really focusing on going slow, everything will fire a lot better. You're also allowing for that time under tension, so you're going to get that blood flow into your hip area. And you also go at a level that you can handle. Same principle applies to every single exercise. Do not go past a level that you cannot handle with your specific case. There's probably going to be some learning of what the condition is doing with your body, how your body is adapting. That's really what it is. It's just adapting to the different stimulus. That's all. Definitely be patient with it, but these are some options for you. Now, you can also do this gentle recalibration method with lateral exercises. So that means things like working on that piriformis, 90-90 position with your legs if you can get down into that. Otherwise, I would just do seated good morning and split squat because that's kind of front to back. That's a little bit easier, but eventually you want to progress to working laterally. Again, 5 seconds down, you could do that with support of your hands, and then 5 seconds up. Then you can also do the same thing with your groin. Butterfly position, butt against the wall. You can either put weights right here or just use your hands, but kind of the same thing, just going nice and gentle. That way you're still getting stimulus to your hips. You don't have to go all the way down like that. This probably for anyone with serious hip problems, you're probably going to be stuck right here. Obviously, you do want to get down here, which I'll mention in the standards and next progression after that. Let's see, what else do we have here? You want to constantly monitor the inflammation for all of this. That's where the patience comes in. That's where maybe if you have access to extra MRI scans, you do that. Making sure that your recovery is good as well, because your body's going to be extra sensitive. That's the nature of the diagnosis and condition. Constantly monitor your inflammation. And finally, once your hips start feeling very good, you're able to handle different positions. You get to certain movement standards for the first time since hurting yourself. You want to get even stronger in all of the exercises that you do. There is no end point as soon as you get back from injury, which I'm actually going to caution Logan and the rest of anybody who's dealt with serious injuries, is that just because you're feeling better doesn't mean that that's an end point. You can still get way stronger. That way you never have to deal with any of these pains ever again. It's not enough to just get out of pain and be done with that. If you want to increase your performance even more, you have to get stronger in these movements. You have to get faster in these movements, dropping down into them at the same time. That way your body can handle all the stimulus. You want to be able to handle faster movements and then also twitchier movements on top of getting stronger, handling load. That's all-encompassing structural balance, just with the filter of working on your specific hip ability. So that is how I would fix Logan Couture's specific condition, which is really just he has weak hips. Like that's what it means. Any one of you who has a similar condition, like FAI, which is what I had, like, which is just hip impingement. Like, some people get surgeries off of that just to cut off the bone to make the hip joint move better. But once they do that, then the symptoms return oftentimes. So it's like that wasn't the issue. The issue of the matter was it's a matter of the strength of the hip and the integrity of the connective tissues around that. All of these exercises train the connective tissues better than anything else I've seen. Plus, they give you an opportunity to get even stronger in this. I can lift 200 pounds on this fucking split squat. I can lift 220 pounds on that seated good morning, only for 2 reps though. And I'm working towards a 400-pound back squat, ass to grass. Not this 90-degree bullshit all the way down here and then going up. And then you say like, oh, I'm gonna have knee and hip issues long term. Fuck that. That's not happening. And by no means is that happening. Like, my connective tissue tolerance is the best it's ever been. This is a process of 2 to 3 years, fixing my hips within 6 months, feeling great, not being in pain anymore, then progressing the strength of these exercises. This took me 3 years to this point. I've been with ATG for 3 years. Been doing that system for 3 years. Doing the principles for 3 years with different exercises. Doesn't have to take you that long to get out of pain, but as far as getting really good at these movements so that way you never have pain again, that's the process that I'm talking about. This is going to take time, but that's the end result. I don't hurt my hips anymore. I don't hurt my back anymore. I don't hurt my knees, shoulders, everything else, because that is just what I've dialed away with this system. I mastered all those standards. Now I'm sharing how to do that for yourself. That way you can get out of this chronic pain cycle or anything that you're dealing with acutely or anything else like that. I want to be another success story to the reason that this programming, this system of strength around the connective tissues, around this athletic range concept of why it works so fucking well. Better than anything else that I've seen. Completely changed my athleticism. I would say I was jumping 19 inches and now I'm jumping over 30. I want to hit that 40 so I can dunk. But like, it does so much more than just prevent injuries. HEG does so much more than prevent injuries. It actually trains your body integrity, your body ability. Training ability does way more than everything else. That's why I'm such a big proponent of it. That's how we would do it for your hips. Logan Couture, if you're listening to this, this is how I would do it with you. It's not enough to just finish your rehab. You got to get stronger with these movements. And I'm living proof that you can do that. You can get stronger with these movements. I don't care if you're 34, 35, like, you can fix your hips. I know people in their 40s and 50s almost who are still dunking, so that goes to show you can still have your athleticism, you can still be in shape. For, a pro hockey player, which even they're not in great shape anyway, you have a great opportunity right in front of you to get in the best shape of your life after fixing your hips, which will also, once you fix that, it will get you in the best shape of your life. So, you take it or leave it. I don't even know if you're going to watch this, but I hope you do. I've been watching you my whole life, because I was born in San Jose. I hope you do well. I hope you do see this. I hope you fix your hips. So, anyway, and any of the rest of you hockey players or people looking to fix their hips in general, I'm hoping to show you the way too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.